here with Greg Stanley. I'm Wes Warren. We're from Whitehall Management, trying to create a buyer's guide for those of you thinking about hiring a consultant or a coach for your dental practice. Obviously, there's many choices out there, and hopefully this gives you a little insight on which is the best choice for you at your office. So, Greg, what have you learned? I think we've come up with 12 key points here. What have you learned about this? You've seen people do very well with various consultants, obviously with us, but around the country, there have been other great consultants. What have you learned about picking?
It's an easy business to get into. All you got to do is promise everybody you can give them everything you want. And I think in these 12 points, we can show that it's really harder than it looks. Okay. Yeah, it's like a marketing guy. Everybody's looking for a marketing person who will always say, yeah, I can do that, I can do that. And maybe there was somebody they made happy once. But when your turn comes, it's just you paying money and them giving you an excuse. First thing is to understand the difference between a consultant and a coach. A consultant is somebody in a practice today that can answer a few questions, or at least the questions you're looking to get answers to. A coach is somebody who can shape your practice, take your team, teach them each the key points of their job, and literally, like a coach, you know what, you were in baseball, you know that a coach's job is to take what you can do well and make it better, and take what you can do well and make it at least passable. That's
Right.
what coach does. He can make all the team step up. Whereas a consultant can just answer questions like, should I be raising my prices? Should I be marketing? In other words, just simple yes or no questions.
Okay, fair enough. I agree with that. Consultant can, if you're looking for a couple questions that you need to answer, like should I rent or should I buy? That's a consultant. They'll help you kind of with those basic questions. And yeah, you're right. If you want to shape a practice and get a growth strategy, that's a coach to really work you through. And there is a big difference. So a lot of people hire what I would consider consultants, so local people who worked in for different various offices around, and they help you out with insurance billing or how to do this or how to do that. That's a consultant.
Number two, is the staff willing or unwilling? Meaning, have they decided they're going to be who they are? I'm not changing. I'm not improving. I'm not going to show up on time because I never have. Get over it. I'm who I am. Where the coach, and I've watched you do this, Wes, in coaching, when you start, a lot of times you get a lot of stink eye. Staff sometimes are all really unkind and very direct about it. And you keep your head in the batter's box, as they say. You stay in there till in 3 months, I've seen them, they like you, they're doing what they're supposed to. And you know, if you hadn't, and I might add, if the doctor had not condoned this process, it would probably been over in a week after the staff said, this isn't for us, you know.
Yeah, so you obviously know the answer to this. Do you have a team that's really willing and eager to learn and want to expand their knowledge base and are leaning into new ideas and concepts and wanting to grow, or are they unwilling? Far too often they're unwilling, and that's its own problem.
It's a huge problem if your thought is, I want to get out of the one doctor, got to work myself to death posture, get an associate or two, and have a winning practice that by itself generates referrals, revenue, et cetera, et cetera. Right now, there's kind of a mutual love affair with staff and doctors. They all just like each other, and there's just, I'm the only doctor, you're the only staff, there's a half a dozen of you, and I can meet all your emotional needs. I can encourage you and so forth. We start getting the associate in the picture, the team has to come together. They have to improve. So unwilling staff and associate doctors, that is a toxic brew. So let that be said. So that's a question.
So what happens if I've got toxic teams? Should I deal with that first before I hire someone?
You'd want to coach through that and see who you can recover, who can make the team, so to speak. All right, number one is coaching versus consulting. Number two, willing staff, unwilling staff. Number three, is this coach or this consultant up to speed with the uniqueness of your practice? For example, you're a TMJ person, or you're a all on 4, all on 6, whatever you are. Is this person coached or consulted for this kind of practice? If the answer to that is you don't know, you're probably headed again to troubled waters.
Because this is a big one.
Yeah.
There are probably 20 different types of practices just in general dentistry, very distinct styles of practice. You named a few, but there's many more. And if they're not up to speed on your specific type of practice, yeah, they can actually ruin your practice, really. Trying to go, if they're doing just some cookie cutter, this is what I know, this is what's worked for me in the past, and try to stamp it onto your practice, it can go horribly wrong. Horribly wrong.
We've seen this lead to absolute tragedy. Okay, number 4, associate implications. If you have an associate or you want to bring one on, make no mistake, staff have to be coached up to excellence. Everybody's got to learn how to make up the difference that the new associate can't do for themselves, whether it's getting case acceptance, getting patients to agree to come back, or whatever it happens to be.
So if this is you, if you're going down that road, or that's where you're at, you should hire a consultant or a coach, actually.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, number 5, competitive issues. And I hope everybody is still with us. This is if you're in an area where there's more than one dentist per 1,250 prospective patients. That's the norm in the country. So if there's 2 or 3, or heaven forbid 4 or 5 per 1,200, if you want referrals, if you want to compete, you got to be at a whole new level in this practice. So if whoever you're working with can't help you bring your practice, everything from Google reviews all the way through to referrals, people staying with the practice versus one-hit wonders, or do you need somebody to help your practice become far more competitive? I've met doctors dangling at the end of the food chain where they were in a small town, maybe 15,000 people, 4 or 5 dentists, and they were last. They were underperforming. Okay, number 6, how to deal with the issues of scarce staff, scarce hygienists, and associates. This is not just about whether or not they have experience with this, but actually how much experience. For example, I've been in the financial world, and I know there's times when we can go decade or more with no inflation, and people can be financial consultants. Then all of a sudden, there's this big wave of inflation. So it is in practice. There's times when just about anybody can run an ad, fill up their practice with staff, associates, hygienists, etc. In other words, is the person you're going to work with, do they have fallback techniques? Do they know how to deal in extreme scarcity? And I'll go so far as to say, if I can say it openly, how to draw strong enough. And though you don't go out to do this, you don't call people that are working in another office, but you make an offer good enough that people reconsider where they're working and consider you.
But also they got to know what strategies to use. You're dealt a certain set of cards with your practice, and one of them is the environment of attracting employees. There are strategies you can use if you're having trouble attracting good employees. So I'll do one right now, just real quick. It's hygiene. If we can't find a hygienist, it's figuring out how to get our hygienist we do have to accelerate using an assistant. Now that's quite a trick to convince them of that. But if you haven't done it before and you haven't convinced other hygienists to do that, if you don't have that experience, you're gonna struggle right out of the gate in knowing what hand to play when it gets dealt to you.
Wes, we were at a meeting in Ohio this last weekend, and there was a number of practices that had assisted hygiene, just like you're talking about. And there was a few that needed it, and they had tried to introduce it to their teams and just been rejected out of hand. Having all those people that could answer all the questions about how to compensate, how to time it, and all of that. So dealing with this extreme scarcity, you got to be under the guidance of somebody who knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, Greg, sometimes you just got to know how to talk people into stuff. It's as simple as that, you know, and if you've never done it before, good luck.
Yeah, if you end up with a consultant or a coach that can't answer these questions, you've just added to your overhead and haven't solved any problems. Let's go on to the next one. Because, you
Okay.
know, we've talked about a lot of things where you have to be open to new ways of thinking related to hiring, compensating, et cetera, et cetera. Number 7 would be how to profitably motivate a team. You know, the balance of power swung so far to employees during COVID, et cetera, and following on. We've had offices where staff can come in and literally demand a third more pay. And so those little bonuses we've been paying in the past may not be meaningful. So how do you motivate staff profitably in this new landscape? If your consultant can't answer that, again, you've added to your overhead and haven't solved your problems. Okay, let's go on to number 8. How do you use and train through a leadership structure? You know, the more time that passes, the clearer it becomes that when doctors in bigger offices, you know, 15, 20 staff, more, when they start telling staff what to do, it's incredibly destructive. Staff's feelings are hurt. They don't seem to take it the right way. They have to work through people. And besides, they've got a job. They got a full-time job, drilling, filling, crowning, et cetera. So how to put a leadership structure in place, how to compensate them, how to motivate them, how to get them to start coaching up some of that team. So that would be number 8, how to use and train a leadership structure. If whoever you're working with can't do that, you're probably off track. Okay, number 9, strategies. If your coach, your consultant doesn't understand the current strategies for building a dental practice, and let me explain. You know, everybody has for years used one simple strategy for the most part in dentistry. Well, maybe 2. I'll talk about them. One was more hygiene means more dentistry. That's pretty straightforward for the office that's just looking to grow with bread and butter. There was another strategy, and that was charge a bunch, do all big cases, and you'll be fine. And the truth was, you just destroy your practice. But we found there's 10 basic strategies that can range from how you compensate your staff, that is how it builds your practice, all the way through to leadership strategies, how to apply your leadership, how to create a culture that builds your practice. There's a number of them. But I would say if who you're working with as a coach or consultant can't give you a strategy that fits into your framework, you're probably going to struggle.
I'll give you a strategy to avoid. So when you ask them, you know, what's your growth strategy? What's your main objective in coming into an office? And they say, well, it's to get hygiene to sell more. When I say sell more, in other words, that they get all the necessary x-rays, that they don't miss anything, that they're selling night guards and bite guards and all that kind of stuff to your patient base. So many consultants that's their bread and butter. They go there, they can get pretty good results in a few months, and they can go, see here, look what I did. If that's the thing that they first go to as their strategy, they don't know. They're
Short-sighted.
yeah, don't sign up.
I've had people who did that and piled in with all they could, with their whole heart, and in 6 months they literally didn't have a practice because they were overselling what people weren't prepared for, et cetera, et cetera. A good point, Wes. Some consultants can actually ungrow a practice, if I can use that word.
Yeah.
Okay, number 10, what staff can safely interact with the doctor versus feeling intimidated? Meaning you need a consultant that can help staff who are standing chairside or working at the front or whatever. It's really more working with the doctor than the staff, but staff are afraid to ask questions. They're afraid to bring up things that are probably killing the practice because the doctor just doesn't want to hear it. If you have a consultant or a coach that's not helping the doctor to safely listen in on what their staff are trying to tell them. Because let me give you an example. I've had staff approach a doctor and say, hey, you know, so-and-so out there, she's running off patients, or she's so bad on the phone, we're not getting anything. None of our marketing patients are coming through the door. And the doctor, because that's his sister-in-law, or because he wants everybody to get along, says, I don't want to hear that. Hey, you just go out there and fix. In other words, how they interact. If the coach or consultant can't help put that together, you're going to run aground. And number 11, choosing an effective and appropriate marketing plan versus getting strung along to buy more and more marketing. Hey, you just didn't stay with it long enough. You didn't spend enough. There's a number. In other words, we're in a new era. And if your coach or consultant doesn't understand that you spend $1 today and we don't make the phone ring, you have probably started down a bad path, because it leads to them saying, oh, you just need to give it 6 months, need to give it a year. Hey, you need to give it a week. Today, in this world, digital marketing, etc., it works or it didn't work.
I'll give you one question to ask your consultant or coach, is just simply ask them, how much is it costing on average to attract a new patient into a dental office? What are you seeing? If they can't give you a straightforward answer on that,
they don't have experience.
They don't have experience. Yeah.
Let me give you an example. Before COVID, that was probably $250, $200 to $250 to get a patient through the door, what we call the cost of patient acquisition. Today, it went down to about $150. However, I have another marketing group who's very competent when helping a doctor looking for certain types of patients, maybe TMJ, full arch, et cetera, et cetera. It can be as high as $3,000 per patient through the door. And then you have to have a highly trained team, and this coach or consultant better show you how to do that quick, or all of that is just for nothing. So choose a coach, a consultant that can help with your marketing is huge. If you're not lucky, you'll find yourself with somebody who's coaching your team, and you're out looking for people in the marketing world yourself, trying to put that together. We have a few who've actually done it, but it's nice when you can get it in one stop. Okay, next, number 12, and this is huge, a coach or consultant that can help perfect your case acceptance. Let me explain what that means, because I watch US work with people day in and day out on this. I know how challenging this is. Getting people to buy more dentistry isn't the problem. You show a lot of dentistry, people will buy it. But will they come back? Will they refer other people? No, because you might have gone too far. How to balance that case presentation, keep them in the practice, keep them referring, keep them coming back. And you know, you have if I could plagiarize something from you, you always check, I've noticed, like a dipstick, checking for oil. You know, do you need a quart? Are you a quart low? You always ask in the practice, are these patients bringing in their family? Are they bringing in their spouse? And the answer is no to that. Case acceptance, it's not working. I don't care if patients are letting you do some work, even paying for it, I got that. But if they're not at least bringing in their family, you're probably off track.
Yeah, so you might ask a consultant or coach, what is the appropriate amount of patients that should come to my practice by way of other patients, by way of referral by other patients? And the answer is a minimum of 30 or third. Okay, so that's the minimum. It could be as high as 100% if you've got a small practice. But if you're doing a lot of marketing, it should be the minimum standard is a third. They should be able to tell you that. You know, they shouldn't have a blank stare. What do you mean? How many patients by referral? If you're getting less than a third, it means the patients that you saw last month went home to their husband and couldn't convince him to come in. That's why it has to be a third. Anything less than that, it's communicating that people actually aren't liking it.
Let me just
that-
add one thing. A lot of owner doctors, when they're on their own, actually do very good at this. They have learned over time, they have a car payment, a house payment. They tune themselves in to patients pretty well. It's kind of intuitive. But when you have an associate, and maybe a new associate, whatever, and they're not really in tune yet with patients. They're new to dentistry or whatever. You need a coach or consultant who can help the staff make up the difference and guide an associate to good case acceptance. Whatever the associate skips, like urgency, affordability, there's any number of things that go with this, but so often we win by getting the staff to make up for associate shortfall. But the idea being to get the associate to produce like the owner. So there's 12 things, Wes, that came to mind very quickly. And I know somebody's probably thinking, oh, these are just things you guys work on. Well, ask yourself, were these important in your practice? I'd be willing to bet they are. So give us a call. We'd be glad to help you with these things and answer your questions.
This is a guide that any consultant, any coach should be able to answer these basic questions. And if they can't, I'd keep on looking.
Yep.
Thanks for listening.